Did you look at yourself like, how, like I was in school, you know what I mean? Like, how did I end up here? I did
Oh,
this myself.
yeah, I looked at myself all right. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I thought I was building a technology company, and I've like worked really hard, and we've raised money and done all these things, and people are looking at us and thinking about us. Our perception is very different on the facade versus like what we're actually doing under the hood. And I'm like second guessing and questioning myself. What are we doing? Think deeply about the market that you're operating in. Like, you want to be in a market where hopefully there are some headwinds. I think market always trumps founders. When there's like a bad market and a good founder, market wins. But if you have a good market or a great market and hopefully a good founder, I think just by being in the game, you're going to be able to get much luckier and just increase your surface areas for building a durable company. I'm a little contrarian in the sense that I know some people say, don't sell a vitamin, only sell painkillers. But I think a lot of startups and a lot of companies within technology are looking for vitamins.
That's product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I called it the product market fit question.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I mean, the name of the show is Product Market Fit.
Do you think the product market fit show has product market fit? Because if you do, then there's something you just have to do. You have to take out your phone. You have to leave the show 5 stars. It lets us reach more founders and it lets us get better guests. Thank you.
Joe, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Dude, I'm excited to hear the story. I mean, so you had this company called Freshline. You raised, I guess in total, like nearly 2 million. You got it to 3.5 million in top line. And then things changed, and now like it's being run by your co-founder, but it became more of a like lifestyle business that's, kind of lower growth. So it didn't really pan out, I mean, the way that you had, let's say, envisioned. And so we'll dig into all that, but clearly you got pretty far along with it. And it's always, it's interesting, these like kind of quote unquote failure stories. I know in your case, it wasn't like it's wind down, it's still a going affair, but like I think as a founder, founders are optimistic by design, they have to be, but you almost feel like if things are going and you hit 1 million, like a million's a magic number, like if you hit 1 million, you're fine, I mean, like, well, you get to 100, I don't know, but like you should be good. And yet there's so many cases, and I've seen it firsthand, of hitting 1 million, hitting 5. You can stall out at any number, at 5, at 10, at 50. You're never done. So anyways, man, welcome to the show. And maybe as a first question, like, tell me a bit about the background of Freshline. Like, what year are we talking in, and kind of what was happening at the time?
Yeah, so this was back in 2016. I was studying computer science and business in university. I was studying in Vancouver. And the genesis really of the story and kind of the company comes from my co-founder. So his family had been in and out of the fishing industry in northern New Brunswick for a couple generations, so super niche. And him and I were, we had started a few projects together back in high school, started a company together. So we were very entrepreneurial, and we had always kind of exchanged ideas and kind of thrown kind of different concepts at each other over the summers. And we were just kind of discussing his experience in the summers in northern New Brunswick, where he observed a lot of these fishermen, lobster fishermen, going dock to dock to dock in each small village before going into the main city to kind of sell the rest of their catch. So what they were doing is they were going to dock, selling bits and pieces of their catch direct to consumers before offloading the majority of their catch in the main city. So he, being the curious guy that he is, my co-founder, he kind of went down to the fishermen and asked, hey, why are you going through all this trouble to, sell bits and pieces of your catch? And I think through that process, we had discovered that fishermen were earning pennies on the dollar. There were a lot of middlemen. The industry, the supply chain was extremely fragmented, antiquated. So, being naive and young, 20-year-olds, we said, why don't we fix that? Why don't we democratize access to smaller scale fishermen, help them sell direct to restaurants, help them sell direct to consumers? People get sustainable, traceable, higher quality seafood for less. And that's really where the journey started.
What an insane market to go after. I mean, like lobster fishermen. Did you think about, like, back then, the market size, the opportunity, or did you just kind of feel like, okay, it's a problem, let's just go solve it, and one step at a time?
I think this is a classic tale of, like a young founder, it being a double-edged sword. I think part of the naivety, it allows you to just have some blinders on and be more risk-taking, which I appreciate. But at the time, I don't think we really appreciated the market. I don't think we did a full like TAM analysis. And as a lot of VCs say, market trumps founders every single time.
Yeah, but again, like you got actually pretty far. So I'm curious to see how you made all that happen. Had you graduated, by the way, or did you drop out to do this?
Both of us had dropped out at that point. Yeah.
And so what's your starting point? What's step one?
The step one is buying a ticket to Boston. So we ended up skipping class, flying down to the Boston Seafood Expo, and just talking to as many people to learn the ropes of the industry. So we didn't even buy exhibition or exhibitor tickets. We just bought attendee tickets, and we were literally going booth to booth, trying to get a better understanding and kind of pitch and get our first beta customer. So yeah.
Were you were you out there saying like, hey, this is the problem, we're going to solve it? Or were you purely like kind of discovery mode, trying to understand?
A little bit of both. Part of it was kind of getting the lay of the land to figure out who were the players and how the industry operated in full. Part of it was we did have a thesis and like an MVP in mind. And we were pitching that to the appropriate people.
What did you like learn from that conference?
You have to talk to customers before building. I think we very much had a solution in search of a problem rather than the other way around. And I think we were somewhat trying to fit, again, our thesis for the solution and the product, a circle into a round peg or a round peg into a circular hole. Yeah, looking back on it, always starting with the problem and building backwards.
What was the thesis then? Like, what was the solution you had in mind?
Well, the problem that we wanted to solve for, I think, was, hey, how do we like help these like smaller scale fishermen sell direct? The conference that we went to, I think the type of organizations and the businesses and the companies that were there, they weren't fishermen. They were a couple layers above in the supply chain. So they had very different problems that they were dealing with and different realities. And for us to try to sell our solution, it was just the wrong buyer and the wrong problem that we're solving. So again, yeah.
So what happens? Like, what do you guys
time.
go? You pitch all these guys at a conference. Which, by the way, conferences, man, I remember we did a conference for Gym Track, which was like the gym track. Like, so Gym Track, we were trying to track like workouts, right? And this is different because we'd raised a bit of money. We spent like $25,000 to go do this, which is a lot of money for us back then. And the product was nowhere near ready. And it became a forcing function on the one hand to get product ready. But, we pushed it too far. Like the product was not ready at this conference. And the whole thing was about tracking reps. And so, dude, what do we do? You know what I mean? Like we had engineers like soldering stuff literally in the hotel room, like before the night before, up to like 4 a.m. Still, we can't get the stuff to like fully work. So what we ended up doing is we had this app, like we had an app basically that was projected onto TV that would show like the rep counting. But basically when somebody would use the product, literally we had an engineer just click a button and it would just move the dot. We're like, what? We spent $25,000. Like we still think this thing's going to work. It just doesn't work today. We're not selling anybody on it right now, but like we can't, what else are we going to do? Anyways, man, it was kind of insane. So I'm not, doing crazy things at conferences. Like you're certainly not the only one.
Yeah, no, I love that. No better forcing function than to show up at a conference and people expect something to work and you're like, all right, you got to make it work.
So what's the fallout of that? Like you talk to these people, you're not really getting the answer you want.
Yeah, well, essentially we were pitching the product to people that we were essentially proposing we disintermediate, right? So that was problem number one. So we did walk away learning a lot about the industry, and I think it kind of reaffirmed that, hey, look at all these middlemen making all of the money, and fishermen here are nowhere to be found, and it's just kind of proof is in the pudding that they're not getting the proportional amount for the amount of risk and the amount of work that they do. So I think that made us a little bit more emboldened in our vision. And funny enough, even though we didn't walk away with any customers at the conference, at the airport lineup, me flying back from Boston to Vancouver is when I ran into a packer or like closer to the fishermen at the airport lineup. And I had just kind of reconvened with my co-founder and I was chatting with him about the conference, and he had turned around. He was lined up right behind me, and he said, "Hey, Like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I want to beta test your product. And that's how we got our first customer. So we did end up walking away with something, but it wasn't at the conference. It was
That's
at their
big though. And what I want to understand is what was that person like? What was the idea of the product at that point? Like, what's this person paying for?
So they basically were paying for like Shopify, but for food suppliers or for fishermen. So the way you transact, the way you sell products when it comes to fish, seafood is fundamentally different when it comes to when you compare it to like selling t-shirts, right? So you sell things by the poundage. You need to be able to factor in perishability. You need to have like strict delivery quarantines or delivery areas where you can service. You can't just ship nationwide. You need to be able to reconcile weights because every piece of salmon is not just 1 pound. It could be 1.4 pounds, 1.1 pounds, 0.9 pounds. So the way, they transact is fundamentally different than what a Shopify or a BigCommerce can provide. So that was like MVP version 1.0 of the product.
But were they selling online at all before, or you're trying to get them from offline to online through this kind of Shopify for fishermen?
No one was selling online. Yeah.
So because it's one thing you make like this guy makes a website, that's cool. But like, he's got to actually market. He's got to do a lot of things to get people to that website. Like, how is that part supposed to work? Like, who's actually thinking of finding lobster on Google? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think that was kind of the evolution of the product. So I think, again, us understanding that, hey, we're going to have to do the grunt work for people, make it really seamless. And the product eventually evolved into a B2B marketplace for seafood. So think Uber, think Airbnb, three-sided marketplace. We would actually handle the sourcing of the supply. We would build these supply markets. We would build these demand markets and connect the two with our subcontracted logistics. So what would happen in essence is chefs would go on, they would see a catalog of high quality premium ingredients, and they would order direct off their phone, and it would get delivered. They didn't have to think about how it was transported to them or where it would come from. We would handle all that, and they would get fresher ingredients, more traceable, ideally cheaper than what they were getting from wholesalers.
So that's the end state. But like, let's maybe walk through like how you get from here to there. So you got this one customer. How, like, where's the product? I think is just an idea. Like, how long does it take to kind of get them online? How do you build this V1?
Yeah, so the V1 really was getting them to launch kind of that online storefront. That was quite easy. We would abstract again, like the branding, the setup, upload of their inventory. And after that, everything that happened beyond that, we would do manually. So that would entail we bought a beat down Ford F-150, and we would do all of the deliveries. Like, we would actually take orders from the restaurants. We would cold call the chefs and say, hey, these are the things we have. These are the prices.
Oh, so even from the beginning, you're kind of doing a market. Because normally, like a Shopify model, you just build a website, you're done. Like, they figure it out. If they sell stuff, they sell stuff. If they don't, they don't. You actually wanted to take on the selling and marketing part of it.
We had to. There was no way around that, because I think no supplier wanted to, no fisherman wanted to do that work themselves.
So you're doing much more than just like a Shopify. Like, you're actually getting them to the end buyer.
We're generating the demand exactly for them. Yeah.
So what does that look like? I mean, what do you have to do to make that happen?
Knocking on doors. Very, very difficult market.
Tell me some stories about those days. I'm sure there's a lot of fun ones.
Oh man, a lot. So what started off as just us like pounding the pavement, like cold calling people. Like we had to figure out how chefs operate, their mindset, what their typical availability is like. So for selling to restaurants, really it's all about walking in. So like, you can call, you can email all you want, and people say cold calling is hard. People say emailing people is hard. Try walking into a restaurant, pretending like you know the chef, and be like, hey, is Chef Bob here on his break? And you're basically trying to pitch him as like a 21-year-old on why they should start buying fish from you. So I think it really tests your mettle, and I think we got a lot of no's. And we have.
What were some of the harshest the harshest versions of no's that you got?
Oh man, I mean, the chefs wouldn't even look at you. They'll just call you an idiot. They'll say it how it is. They'll be like, "Are you an idiot? Like, get out of here!" Right? Even worse is, since we were doing all of the deliveries, and I think there's a lot of variability when it comes to the seafood supply chain, timing of things, perishability, drivers being late. Sometimes there's a lot of fires and you got to put out those fires yourself. So that means grabbing a 50-pound styrofoam box of fish, grabbing a rental car and hand delivering the fish to restaurants. And if you've ever tried delivering, salmon to a high-end Japanese restaurant,
I have not,
at like
by the way.
at 5 o'clock, right in dinner service. Oh man, that is not fun. Getting yelled at by the chef in front of.
Did
them.
you look at yourself like how? Like I was in school, you know what I mean? Like how did I end up here?
I looked at myself. All right, I was like, what am I doing? Like I thought I was building a technology company, and I've like worked really hard, and we've raised money and done all these things, and people are looking at us and thinking about us. Our perception is very different on the facade versus like what we're actually doing under the hood. And I'm like second guessing and questioning myself. What are we doing?
So, but so then going back to that piece, like you're going into restaurants, and admittedly, like everyone who's sold to restaurants knows it's tough. It's just because it's so high stress, so high pressure, low margin. Like these people are so busy. Last thing they want us to be sold to. But anyways, you got to go in there and selling. You got to go in there and do it anyways. What who's the first yes, and what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first yes, it's a numbers game, right? At some point, so some chef is going to buy into the vision, right? They're going to take a chance on you, and just got to run with the opportunity, right? So for us, that was getting a yes from this like French restaurant in Vancouver, and we did everything in our power to make sure they had an excellent experience like the first time around. And that meant like us hand delivering everything, making sure the quality was top notch, the packaging was top notch, just the experience was first class. And then from then on, I think they became more of a reference customer, and we're able to leverage them in our go-to-market activities and kind of grow from there.
And what's the pitch, by the way, for a chef?
The pitch actually is very simple. It's like, hey, we're going to give you access. Forget about all of the technology, right? And the traceability of it all, but we're going to give you sustainable, higher quality, evidently higher, higher quality seafood at a cost that is the same or less than what you're paying.
And why, like, I guess, why is the quality better?
Because it spends less time out of the water. So we're bypassing middlemen. We're going direct as we can to the source. So it just spends less time out of the water.
And what's even the point of the Shopify piece? Like, are you not just like basically a marketplace, kind of you become the middleman instead of all these layers?
Yeah. That's essentially what it is. And we eventually transitioned after a big pivot into more of a Shopify model.
Oh, that was later, the Shopify piece?
That is, yeah. The Shopify model is what it is today, Freshline.io.
Oh, I see. Because I thought that original whatever packer was buying into a Shopify model.
Kind of. So it's an interesting story. So we started off as more of an e-commerce model, and then we became a marketplace through discovery, and then we went back into a branded storefront afterwards.
You kind of got pulled into this marketplace.
I did. Yeah, we did. Exactly.
Let me ask you this, like, how are you funding this whole part of the journey, I should say?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to go through a couple accelerator programs in Canada where we kind of grew up. And we went through Techstars in Seattle and raised a few kind of pre-seed and seed round.
And what was the story?
Tranches. The story that we told to VCs.
Yeah, like what were VCs buying into? What were you buying into at that time?
Yeah. Well, the thesis was, food and seafood as an industry is a massive, massive, massive TAM, right? Global trade in seafood is hundreds of $billions a year, but the process of getting seafood from source to sale is extremely antiquated, fragmented, archaic. It hasn't changed in decades, if not centuries. So the timing, we argued that it was apt to bring technology and
because it was a marketplace era, right? Like you got a lot of Uber for X going on in this 2016, 2018 period.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, like looking back on it now, I'm not sure if that was the appropriate answer to the what now, why now question. I think actually now is a lot more pertinent time with AI being able to take and automate a lot of those like manual order taking, manual back and forth coordination activities, I think now is a lot better of a why now answer.
This is
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna like go in on this because this is where I think the rubber meets the road and things get truly interesting. When you put it that way and you say, look, there's hundreds of billions of dollars here, it's antiquated. Like we're talking about trade that's been, like talk about legacy. You know what I mean? People have been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. So whatever system we have now is just like the organic development of that. It's taking zero advantage of all the changes that have happened in the last 20 years on the tech side. So I'm going to come in, build a marketplace, and just connect the two ends instead of all these middle layers. It actually sounds compelling and makes a lot of sense. And obviously the reality, at least at first, is always going to be messy. But if you look at Uber Eats, you look at all these businesses, like they have all those stories too, and yet those worked out. Like what started to happen in those early years that, started to show you there's something different here. Like this is not going to be, let's say, a successful marketplace. Like there's something missing or whatever. What were some of the holes in that story?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think one of the mistakes that we made as founders was we had this kind of grand vision of where we wanted to run to, but not understanding there's like step function levers to it. So we're not trying to jump directly to that destination, but we're trying to abstract out pieces of the equation one step at a time, right? Just like how, like DoorDash won't get to like full automation on day zero. Like they're trying to take step functions towards their goal. And we were a little bit naive in the sense that we wanted to be, for example, like a thin marketplace. We don't want to own any infrastructure. We don't want to have trucks of our own. We don't want to manage the warehouse. We want to have partners that do all of that, right? Because that's where the valuation premiums come along. And that's what we defined naively as a technology company. So by trying to kind of maybe jump past those like quality assurance steps where we could own a little bit more of the supply chain, we made a lot more mistakes. And what those mistakes entailed was burn, right? We were burning a lot of cash, making a lot of mistakes that we were covering up with funding.
Because just tell me a bit more about the nuances of this marketplace. Like, what was harder about this marketplace? Let's say a marketplace for fish than other marketplaces.
A lot. So number one, there are a lot of moving parts, right? Fish, typically, the majority of it isn't farmed, right? So wild caught, there's unpredictability when it comes to how much is caught, the timing of when something is caught, the pricing of the catch when it lands at the dock. So there's a lot of variability there that in retrospect is smooths out through the number of intermediaries and aggregators in the market, right? So by trying to bypass and go direct to the source, sure, you can be more traceable. Sure, you can have cheaper ingredients or cheaper supply, but you're taking ownership of that risk and the variability. So
I like that answer because like this is where depth and subtleties are so important. On the one hand, at the simple level is you've got to think by the time it gets to the final thing, it's gone through 5 things. Everybody takes a cut. That's more expensive, more cumbersome. But if you as you spend more time in the industry, what you find out is there's a reason why this fisherman first tries to get max price for their stuff, goes through a few docks, then whatever they have, they put it in the system, and the system has a way of finding a way to kind of liquidate that inventory over time. And yeah, people take a cut, but they actually add value in different ways. Maybe they freeze it, maybe they repackage, maybe they, I don't know what they do, make it up, but like there's a reason why they exist. And you kind of don't get that unless you're in there, like unless you're in the market figuring these things out and seeing how, or you've spent years in the industry.
Exactly. No, you're right. They add value oftentimes in very invisible ways on the outside.
And the other question is on the revenue side. I mean, you mentioned you got to 3.5 million of revenue. Is that like of volume sold, or is that actually like your take?
Our volume sold was actually higher. Like if we annualize it, and we were taking anywhere from 5% to like 40%.
So you're moving like a good amount of fish.
Yeah, a good amount of fish. Yeah, exactly. And we were like moving container volumes worth of
Wow.
fish, lobster, crab, what have you.
So I mean, you're
Japanese
making
fish.
it work. Like at that point, like things are functioning.
To a certain extent, yeah.
What started to break? I mean, when you get there, like why can't you, raise an A and grow it bigger? Like what's breaking?
First of all, a lot of mistakes in the supply chain. So I talked a lot about the variability. So we were making mistakes where essentially we were assuming inventory risk, right? So we were assuming inventory risk to the tune of like millions of dollars, and oftentimes something would go wrong. Chefs wouldn't want some goods, some stuff would be late, some stuff would come in too early. Wrong product would get picked and packed because, again, we were relying on partners who didn't fully understand seafood to do the picking and packing and the delivery of the goods for
And
us.
that's your hit.
Yeah, that's our hit. So that was us just coming right out of our top line bank account. So there were definitely cracks, within our model, and we were just starting to have that discussion of, do we need to own the warehouse? Do we need to own the inventory? Do we need to just have like our engineers and our operators be next to the warehouse plant so that we can at least oversee and ensure a level of quality to ensure that we could scale properly? So that was kind of the question that we were asking ourselves. And right around that point is also when COVID hit. So essentially 2020, we went from doing millions in revenue to essentially like nothing, because our ICP was higher end restaurants, so Japanese, seafood restaurants, Italian restaurants. So the first kind of segment of restaurants that got impacted, they couldn't even do takeout. So we had to go right back to the drawing board. Do we keep burning money and just wait for things to come back? They may or may not come back. I don't know if you remember, Pablo, but at that time, no one really knew what was going
100%.
on. That was also when a lot of our competition and competitors, the seafood wholesalers, the meat producers, had started coming to us and said, "Hey, like we need to find markets for our ingredients. We need to find homes for our seafood. Can you help us set up home delivery? You guys kind of know technology. You guys know food, obviously, and distribution. Let's work together." So that's when we spun out and essentially helped all of our competition set up home delivery.
That's the Shopify version that you mentioned?
Yeah, somewhat. So that was still a bit of a marketplace, but eventually from there on, what we realized is, hey, all of these food purveyors, wholesalers, suppliers, as the pandemic had started to kind of cease, they're still selling to restaurants and they're taking their orders by phone, fax, email. Somebody needs to be at the warehouse to even check inventory and let the chefs know that they got the order. So that's when we took essentially everything we had already built and spun it out into like a B2B Shopify for restaurants to be able to order direct from their meat distributor, from their seafood distributor through like a branded storefront. So we no longer own the relationship. We no longer were the demand generators. We would just provide the technology, the invoicing, the back of house management.
By the way, what were on that when you before COVID, the 3.5 million? What is like the unit economics? What do the margins look like?
So the margins were variable depending on the product. So that was another really, really complex part of our model. Because we were beholden to market dynamics, right? So to give you an example, Japanese seafood like hamachi is just organically is going to have much, much, much higher margins. There's less competition. It takes like specialty sourcing. So you could enforce 40%, 50% on that product. When you're talking about Atlantic cod that is used in like fish tacos, maybe you're making 5%, maybe you're 4%.
And that margin
on
is from the fish value to your take, right? That's what we're talking
correct.
about. And then on your take, like on that 3.5, you have fulfillment costs and all these sort of things. Were you breaking even on that 3.5, or were you losing money with each delivery? Like, how are you operating?
We were right about break even, but we were still losing money. And we were obviously employing like high value, like engineering, operations, designers. So yeah.
Do you think like if COVID hadn't happened, you think the story ends differently? Like, do you think you raised an A and today you're doing, 50 million in revenue, or was there something fundamentally not working?
I think there were fundamental cracks with the model. And we may have lived on and we may have raised more capital, but I think it probably would have been like death by 1,000 cuts instead of like one, stab. So I'm somewhat glad that, COVID happened, and in retrospect, we learned what we did. And obviously, from a VC standpoint, definitely a failure. But I think from like a personal standpoint of learning, growth, expanding my horizons, and setting me up for like what I'm doing now, it has 100% been a success.
Because now it's still alive. It's a going concern, but it's kind of sub $1 million in revenue, sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so let's maybe stop it there. And I guess like my questions are, in terms of lessons learned, like what are some, because like you said, now you're doing something else. I work on a startup called Super Demo, right?
That's correct.
What are some of the biggest lessons from what you just went through? That was like many years. That was like 5 years or so at Freshline. I remember for me, from my journey of 5 years, I really reflected on it. And there's some big lessons that I didn't end up starting another business, though I was going to, and then ended up where I am today at Mistral. But like there were some big lessons. Like I'm definitely not going to do these things, or I'm going to do this thing. You know what I mean? Like what are those for you?
Yeah. I mean, one is I kind of prefaced it earlier, but like think deeply about the market that you're operating in. Like you want to be in a market where hopefully there are some headwinds. I think market always trumps founders. When there's like a bad market and a good founder, market wins. But if you have a good market or a great market and hopefully a good founder, I think just by being in the game, you're going to be able to get much luckier and just increase your surface areas for building a durable company.
So can you make that specific? Like what market are you in now, and why did you choose that market?
Yeah, so we're kind of in the nexus of like PLG, product-led B2B SaaS, and AI. So I think AI content creation and Gen AI enabling new forms of creation within software. So what we do is AI-powered demo automation. We help companies create better product demos for onboarding, enablement, training, sales, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think being in the nexus of where we're at, there's been a huge trend, obviously huge growth, and we've been able to ride that
so
wave.
For you, the headwind is not like, it's not so much the industry, it's more like the fact like it's an AI. So AI has like the sorry, not the headwind, the tailwind for you.
Part of it, and like the class of customers that we sell to, right? So for us, I know I'm a little contrarian in the sense that I know some people say, don't sell a vitamin, only sell painkillers. But I think a lot of startups and a lot of companies within technology are looking for vitamins. Yeah, if you like operate within a TAM and a buyer base that is always looking to improve and is like searching for solutions to problems they have, you're going to do well by operating within it and building an exceptional product.
Can you dig into that vitamin painkiller? Like obviously I know about the thing, but yeah, obviously like usually the consensus is you want painkillers, not vitamins. Why do you have the opposite thought?
I guess it depends on how do you categorize vitamins, right? Because to some people, a vitamin could be a painkiller. To other people, a painkiller, a vitamin. I think the mistake that we made previously is if we look at Freshline, right, or look at the food distribution industry, we from the outside categorize the problem that we were solving as a painkiller. But if you really dig down into the industry and the participants within the problem space, they weren't finding workarounds or finding like alternative solutions to solve that problem. So it wasn't necessarily something that they were on the lookout searching for. So it took a lot of education for us to convince them in the first place that this is something that they could take on. Versus within B2B SaaS, I think by the very nature of it being extremely competitive and, like a percentage here or there could make the difference between you like winning a deal or not for a company.
Like you're thinking about vitamin as kind of like an edge. Like people want an edge versus
exactly.
Versus cost saving. Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's more of the definition.
Yeah.
The definition piece. So that makes sense. What's going back to the lesson? So you talked about this lesson of the market. What's maybe another lesson that you learned?
And this might be contradictory to the first one, but I think a lot of success in startups oftentimes I think is staying in the game long enough to get lucky. I think a lot of success in startups I found from both myself and with other really successful, I'm not saying I'm successful, but other successful founders, is they're in the game and they're gritty and they're cockroaches long enough for them to take advantage of luck, to take advantage of something, a spark that happens in the market. And obviously you as a founder need to be able to execute upon that luck and ride it. But oftentimes that can come at any point. So I think as long as you have clear conviction and you're rational about like why you're in the market, I think if you're like just executing, putting your heads down and you're persistent, you're going to end up doing well, as long as it's not a bad market.
No, I think that's totally true. I think no matter how like optimistic you want to be, you have to at least acknowledge that you have some sort of probability distribution of success. Like this current product has a certain probability distribution of success. This entire business has a certain probability distribution of success. And you as a founder have, one, they each kind of reside in each one. So like whatever, you might say it's 90% likely to work. Somebody might say it's 10% likely to work, but it's certainly not 0 and it's not 100. And so if that's the case, then part of it is really just staying in the game. Like maybe this product works, maybe it doesn't, but as long as you do another product, then you kind of start stacking those probabilities. Maybe this whole business doesn't work, but you do another business. And, over time, like you said, if you try to maximize the odds of any given product or business, but if you just kind of keep doing that and getting more at bats, your odds of succeeding at some point, get pretty close to 100, frankly.
100%. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, dude, thanks so much for jumping on the show, man. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Listen, when you go to like a restaurant, you eat a nice, meal, maybe a fancy one, maybe not. Do you leave a tip? I assume you probably leave a tip. You probably leave a tip 100% of the time. Well, guess what? A review is just like a tip. And I know you haven't been leaving one. So just like the waiter that doesn't get a tip after hours of great service, I'm getting a little frustrated. So take your phone out and leave a review. It helps the show move up rankings. It helps us get better guests. It doesn't just help me. It helps way more founders. Thank you.